So right now, with the election of Donald Trump, many liberals are complete and utterly terrified because we don't know really what to expect. Is he actually going to follow through with some of his more insane policies? We don't know. And conservatives are currently laughing at liberals because, well, we're making comparisons to him and Hitler. We're saying that he's a quasi or a proto-fascist. Now they say, oh, well, everyone who liberals and Democrats and progressives don't like, they just call Hitler, or they call a fascist. They called Bush a fascist. They compared Mitt Romney to Hitler. Well, first and foremost, that's projection, because any liberal who you don't like, you automatically just declare that they're socialist or communist, when I bet that you probably couldn't define that term if your life depended on it. And second of all, we're not calling Donald Trump a proto-fascist because we simply dislike him. We're basing that label on the policies that he's proposing, because as of late, he's talking about reinstating a Bush-era policy that is not just unconstitutional, but it's borderline fascist. Fusion explains, President-elect Donald Trump is reportedly considering plans for a national registry of Muslims under his new administration. He said policy advisors would recommend reinstating the National Security Entry-Exit Registration System, a post-9/11 era program that was shuttered in 2011 after civil rights groups pointed out the registry opened the door for widespread racial profiling. Muslims already say they fear for their personal safety after Trump's election, and the registry to single them out for their religion would only make matters worse. Now, anticipating the response of conservatives, they'll say, well, Mike, Bush did this policy, so why isn't Bush technically a fascist as well? Well, I'll tell you. So what Bush did was tantamount to anti-Muslim bigotry, no doubt. But Donald Trump's vehemently anti-Muslim nationalistic rhetoric makes the revival of this policy a lot more scarier under him, because he also wants to ban Muslims from entering and exiting the country. And additionally, his anti-Muslim rhetoric is empowering anti-Muslim bigots across the country. Just to give you a taste of the Trump effect, anti-Muslim incidents have gone up and are now the highest they've been since 9/11. So in 2001, there were 481 anti-Muslim events, according to the FBI, and in 2015, the year in which Donald Trump launched his campaign, there's been 257 anti-Islamic incidents. And it's not just Muslims. So hate crimes overall increased about 6.7% from 2014 to 2015, but that increase still left such incidents below what they were a decade earlier. Anti-black incidents rose by about 7.6%. Anti-Jewish incidents rose by about 9%, and incidents based on sexual orientation rose by about 3.5% during that time frame. Now, the reason why we have to oppose this vigorously is because bigotry is a very slippery slope. If you start with one anti-Muslim policy, it leads to another, and the problem could augment across the country. And we could see not just the federal government implementing these types of bigoted policies, but we see state and local municipalities doing the same thing like they did in World War II-era Germany. And guess what? We all saw the story. We know what happened there. Let's not do it again. Quote, Nazi leaders began to make good on their pledge to persecute German Jews soon after their assumption of power. During the first 6 years of Hitler's dictatorship, from 1933 until the outbreak of war in 1939, Jews felt the effects of more than 400 decrees and regulations that restricted all aspects of their public and private lives. The government required Jews to identify themselves in ways that would permanently separate them from the rest of the population. In August of 1938, German authorities decreed that by January 1st of 1939, Jewish men and women bearing first names of non-Jewish origin had to add Israel and Sarah respectively to their given names. All Jews were obligated to carry identity cards that indicated their Jewish heritage, and in the autumn of 1938, all Jewish passports were stamped with an identifying letter J. So, needless to say, we cannot let this happen to America. No, this registry isn't the same thing currently, but again, it's a slippery slope, and it could quickly lead to more and more anti-Muslim bigotry that is sanctioned by the federal government. Now, to anyone who is defending this policy, let me ask you this. When liberals propose a federal registry for people who own guns, if you're one of the people that freak out about that, which is not unconstitutional, but are supporting this, which is unconstitutional because it violates the First Amendment, you're not objective, you're biased, you're just a hateful asshole who wants to single out Muslims because you're afraid. Well, how about this? Stop being afraid. We have to stand up for Muslim American citizens. We have to stand up for groups that are disadvantaged. And look, I'm an atheist. I disagree with their religion. I don't believe in God. But I will be damned if I'm going to let my country turn into a fucking fascist state where we are singling out one group based on their religion. It's not acceptable, and I'm not going to let it happen. And the fact that people are willing to stand by and even defend this is sickening to me. And look, to defend this policy, just to show you how egregious it is, a Trump surrogate literally brought up Japanese internment camps and cited that as precedent for this policy. Take a look.
You heard the mayor's position, which is, we don't do that kind of thing. We don't create registries based on religion.
Yeah, well, we have in the past. We've done it based on race, we've done it based on religion, we've done it based on region. And the fact is, he also brings it back as like a constitutionality issue. The problem is people outside this country are not protected under the same constitutional rights as we are in America.
So you think it's a good idea, and you don't care that this is some sort of a slippery slope where Muslims may get just lumped into some group where they get put on a registry, and some aggressive law enforcement actor in the future might abuse that list?
No, absolutely. Look, there's always a case for abuse in this thing. But the fundamental problem here is we have a large faction. Look, being a part of the Muslim faith is not a bad thing. And there's 1.6 billion Muslims out there. Most of them are perfectly good people. But the fact is there is a small percentage of people that have chose to align with an extreme ideology within the faith, and they're doing harm. So we would like to keep tabs on it until we can figure out what's going on. Trump has said, look, it's a regional-based thing right now. If they're coming into our country, we need to know who they are, where they are, and what's going on. Because
he's trying to stop. He's trying to stop immigration into the country from countries where there are major terrorist issues, and until we can figure out what's going on. But this seems like something else, which is if you're coming over. I mean, this is what I'm reading. Okay, this is that again, the Kansas Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, who helped write the tough immigration laws in Arizona, said today that Trump's policy advisors are discussing drafting a proposal to reinstate a registry for immigrants from Muslim countries,
Yeah, and perfectly honest, it is legal. They say it'll hold constitutional muster. I know the ACLU is going to challenge it, but I think it'll pass. And we've done it with Iran back a while ago. We did it during World War II with Japanese, which, call it what you will, maybe wrong.
You're not proposing we go back to the days of internment camps, I hope.
No, I'm not proposing that at all, Megan. But what I am saying is that we need to protect America first.
That's the kind of stuff that gets people scared, Carl.
Right. But I'm just saying there is precedent for it, and I'm not saying I agree with it, but in this case, I absolutely believe that a regional-based...
You can't be citing Japanese internment camps as precedent for anything the president-elect is going to do.
Look, the president needs to protect America first, and if that means having people that are not protected under our Constitution have some sort of registry so we can understand, until we can identify the true threat and where it's coming from, I support it.
You get the protections once you come here.
If you are seeing this, you need to fight back. We cannot let this happen. This is not just a brazenly unconstitutional policy. It's just wrong. It's unethical, and we cannot let this stand in the United States of America. We claim to be a free country. Well, we're not free if we let this go through, and we all have to fight and stand up for our Muslim brothers and sisters right now and oppose this vigorously.